गुड मॉर्निंग एंड वेलकम टू गणेश शॉट। गणेश शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। Trump's corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. Well, Trump has come out with his new national security strategy, his doctrine, and everything. And he's called it the Trump's corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. Okay, so there's a lot of discussion on what it means, what the NSS is all about, and how things are happening, and X, Y, Z about this, doctrine. What does it mean for the world, and how good or bad it is? And everyone's examined it from their point of view. There's a lot of discussion in India also, but the discussion is centered on the fact that look, India gets mentioned only once. That's it. So India is irrelevant. Well, that might be so. That's the way normal people think. But I don't think of it that way. The fact is that this doctrine or this strategy, national security strategy, has put forth a new way of thinking, of American thinking. And this American thinking is going to last for the next 3 years. Good, bad, or ugly, Trump is going to be there for the next 3 years. It's going to. So, what does it mean? It might change after that with the next president. Trump is going to act as per this doctrine, as per this strategy. And this effect of this is already there. This Monroe Doctrine or his corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is not new. He said that when he took over the presidency, he wanted Greenland, he wanted Canada, he wanted the Panama Canal, and he put some controls over all these. Now he's getting after Venezuela, Colombia. All these are in his cards. He's been tough on Brazil. Let's be very clear. The Monroe Doctrine is something which he started on day one. Now he's strategized it. Well, when a country like USA, and it's a consequential country, people might say it is vanishing, yeah, all that. I don't believe it. It's there. It's the richest country in the world. It controls almost everything, despite the Chinese hype of manufacturing. It's still got the most consequential armed forces. It controls all our finances. The dollar is the reserve currency, and it's not running away. And there's no alternative to it. Remember, there's no alternative to the dollar in the world today. So it is consequential. And when a country of that size and nature says, I'm going to focus on the Western Hemisphere, you have to sit up and think. And when you look at it, you might call it logical, illogical, inconsistent, everything. It's going to have implications. And in India, we say, oh, India has got no value. India has got no value. It doesn't matter whether Trump says India has value or not. What we have to look is what is USA and Trump going to do, and what is China going to do as a resultant, and what are the other countries going to do, and then see what are the implications for India. How does it affect us? How does it affect our growth? Right? That's the important thing. That's the more important thing, the way I look at it. And that's what I'm going to analyze. What we're going to analyze is something very interesting happened after this NSS came out. Trump came out with a C5 strategy or a C5 thought process, the core 5. Well, it is at this point of time that core 5 is nebulous. People don't understand what it is. People are this thing. But there is some logic in that core five also. And we'll talk of this core five business at the end of the world, because whatever the implications of the NSS, they end at C5. Right? The fact is, okay, like what Akshay says, good morning, sir. American football and baseball is a sports analogy to the Monroe Doctrine, famous in USA only. It might be famous in USA, but it is consequential to the whole world. Don't miss the wood for the trees. Don't go for the polemic. That's the important thing. And that's what we're going to talk of today. Right? Okay, let's get going and see what the whole story is all about. China is also already, thinking in China, if you read, it's facing new threats as per this doctrine. Why? The doctrine very clearly says the US focus is on the Indo-Pacific, South China Sea, and the first island chain. And that worries China to no end. Because that bottles China up. Okay? And China has to find ways to break out of that bottle. USA's Monroe Doctrine was originally to consolidate the Americas and the Western Hemisphere. Now that's a warning to China now. This corollary is a warning to China. Get off Latin America. The Chinese are perceiving it this way. Implications. Okay. And the Chinese are saying, look, America has said no change in the status quo in this Taiwan Strait. And this, they're saying it in conjunction with Japan and USA. And in this week, we'll discuss this important aspect and the implications for India as a result of this with the three good generals, or maybe today evening with the gunner side. I don't know what. I've had a word with Mr. Shreya, and we're going to restart this whole process. Very important. And that's why I'm taking this up. Let's go over this NSS in detail, right? And then see word by word. I'm going to flash excerpts from this NSS of Trump, and then we'll analyze what it has implications for India. He says the days of US propping up the entire world order like Atlas are over. Very important. The new world order is going to be multidimensional, it's going to be multipolar, it's going to be multi-vector, call it what you want. But the unipolarity or the bipolarity is out. If you consider yourself a pole, you have consequences. If you don't consider yourself a pole, there are poles coming around you who are going to crush you. So you have to change your thinking. USA will not be around every time you're looking around. You don't look at the USA for the referee. USA is no more the global referee. Learn to stand up on your own. That's the first implication for India. And we have a problem with China and Pakistan on our heads. Like Op Sindur has taught us, China and Pakistan are one ceaseless adversary to us. And we need to behave accordingly. That's the implication. And US definitely, we're now known in Op Sindur. It's not going to come to help us. Let me put it something in a different context. This complete business of the national security strategy of Trump is not prospective. It's not something. It's not a vision statement. It is a retrospective recounting of facts. It's a reflection of US behavior for the past 1 year ever since Trump has taken over. It's a behavioral thing, so it's real. You have to handle it. whether it's for the Middle East, for the Far East, or for Americas, it is based on the past 1 year behavior of USA. That's where I think many of us are missing the wood for the trees. He defines he defines in unambiguous terms US core vital national interests. This is what he writes. If we want to halt and reverse the ongoing damage that foreign actors inflict on the American economy while keeping the Indo-Pacific free and open, preserving freedom of navigation in all crucial sea lanes, and maintaining secure and reliable supply chains and access to critical materials. It is not as if America has withdrawn. America will be there everywhere with its overbearing military might. But America will act in its own interests. If it needs critical materials, it'll go for it. They keep their supply chains open, they'll open it. And for that, if they have to protect it with their navy will be deployed globally. In this doctrine, it's very clear that the Indo-Pacific, the South China Sea, the East China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, and all the shoals, everything are important for trade. Okay? And he's very clear in this. They want to halt and reverse the ongoing damage that foreign actors. Who's the foreign actor? China. It is China which is wrecking the American economy. So the focus is on China still. People may talk anything. Look at it this way. If he's telling China to get off Latin America, and China has significant investment in Latin America, including in Venezuela, including in Brazil and Argentina, well, China has a problem. In Argentina, it is playing out because Javier Milei is swinging towards America. He's a far right guy. So China is feeling the pain, so it's acting. Panama has been blocked. I wouldn't say blocked, but the control of Panama is no more with the Chinese. Chinese could tweak Panama. Part of that, you know, information campaign, lawfare, and all that. No more. The dark fleets are being challenged. So this is a retrospective policy based on what's actually happening on ground. And that is something that people have to start understanding. Then he says, we want to prevent an adversarial power from dominating the Middle East. Which is that adversarial power? China. We, right? He says we want to prevent an adversarial power from dominating the Middle East, its oil and gas supplies, and the choke points through which they pass while avoiding the forever wars that bogged us down in that region at great cost. Look at it. Which is that adversarial power which can dominate the Middle East? Iran, China, Russia. He's not used the word power. So it's going to be China which will try and do all this through Iran. Because we've seen what happened in the Iran-Israel war. That China was simply inactive. The focus was on Iran. They hammered Iran out, good, bad, or ugly. Iran has gone down. So you have a situation where a situation has been created by Trump from the Mediterranean coast to the Arabian Sea up to the Pakistan border, India-Pakistan border. The entire area is under US control, whether you like it or not. The Chinese influence is only economic. And that economic interest is not at the expense of USA. right? So there is logic. That's why I said it's a retrospective policy based on what he's done. To some extent, I feel he's justifying whatever he's done or whatever he's doing through a doctrine now. Implications are there already on us. If and it opens up an opportunity. This particular sentence itself opens an opportunity for India. Choke point opening. I've been saying this. Without India, they couldn't have opened the Horn of Africa or the Red Sea Straits. Right? It couldn't have opened up because on the other side, in the Red Sea, US Navy was operating. This side of the Horn of Africa, it was Indian Navy which is active against the Somalian pirates. No one else. So we have a stake in both those straits, the Gulf of Hormuz and the Horn of Africa, or the Aden Straits, what call it, what you want. They're different names. So we have stakes and implications. Then somewhere else he says we want to ensure that US technology standards, particularly in AI, biotech, quantum computing, drive the world forward. Very important for us. You have to decide. You don't have a standard to go by. You don't want to adopt the Chinese standard. You have a choice whether to. I mean, do you have a choice of not going by American standards or their technology? What is your problem? We talk of Russian technology and all that, but has Russia given us technology so far? No. I mean, I'm a great proponent of whatever Russia India friendship and all that, but Russia has not given us any technology so far. Will it give in the future? We'll see. US technology, well, you have to rely on it. That's why you're having that great strategic partnership. Good, bad, or ugly, that strategic partnership stands. Whether it's strategic or not is a different story. That's gone. But the partnership stands. Tomorrow you can rebuild on it. Well, I'm looking at it from my point of view. I'm not looking at the US point of view. I'm not looking at the Chinese point of view or the Russian point of view. How do we go ahead? And then remember, whether it's in AI, whether it's in biotech, or in quantum computing, or anything, the global capability centers are in India. And where do these global capability centers come from? USA. There are huge implications for India in this. So that means you have no choice but to partner with the USA on these issues. And I'll talk of it maybe tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening it will be more appropriate. I'll talk of India. What is India in this fracturing world? So we have a huge thing coming up. Okay? This is absolutely clear. The United States will put our own interests first and in our relations with other nations. So when you deal with the US, you should be very clear that US is acting at its interest. There is no philanthropy for India. And that is playing out. Trump wants to force India into submission. He's not able to do it, but he is at it. So let's face up to the fact that USA is not our friend, neither is it our enemy. So whatever relationship which you have with USA is going to be turbulent. It might not be militarily adversarial. It might not pose a threat to you, but in many cases, it is going to be turbulent relationship with them. You can never trust them. He's, I mean, What I'm saying is not new, but Trump has just reinforced it. Right? This is again a very significant statement. We will no longer tolerate and no longer afford free riding, trade imbalances, predatory economic practices, and other impositions on our nation's historic goodwill that disadvantage our interests. This is directly an arrow against China, right? If this is going to hit China and this is directed towards China, what is the impact on China? And this is playing out. China still is exporting, but there's a limit at which it will say the world can't take on. Even, see, there's a logic in what China does always. The logic is simple: I'll flood your market, kill your industry, and then take over your market and your industry. Today, the prices are low, tomorrow, it will go up. That's the logic of China. Now, USA is not going to let China do that. That's what Trump is attempting. So, what does China do? It goes to the rest of the world. So, what's the implication for us? How does it matter what China does? Implication very simple. That's not a comfortable state for China. China wants a place where it can get profits and not sell at subsidies or substandard things or proxies. Yeah, it's a struggle. So, where does China go? China starts focusing on India. How will China focus on India? That's the topic tomorrow. Will China go to war? China needs a victory to do all this. If it needs a victory to do all this, it needs, where will it go for a victory? We'll talk of that tomorrow. I'm not going to talk of it today. Or it needs open markets. That's where it has to look at India. If, as a result of this strategy, China doesn't get a victory in Taiwan Strait and Western Pacific and all, it has to get a victory against India. So we'll talk of this aspect for tomorrow. But the implication is very clear. Let me look at it slightly differently. I'm giving you different implications in this strategy which have come out. Whether India is important for America or not is irrelevant to me. What is relevant to me is how does it affect me? Okay? He says the era of mass migration is over. The heading says it all. While everyone might say border security is the primary element of national security, that's what he says. Mass migration has strained domestic resources, increased violence and other crime, weakened social cohesion, distorted labor markets, and undermined national unity. He might be saying it as far as the Mexicans, the Puerto Ricans, the Cubans, and all who are coming in, or the Chinese who are coming in different routes. But there's a huge element of Trump's orientation against India. We know that H1B problem, deportations, all this is happening. This is migration from India. The migration from India to USA has a different dimension. And that dimension is already playing out, and that implication should be very clear. When Trump tightens migration rules into USA, it has got a huge implication for India. There's a danger. The danger is you can't send your people there. There's an opportunity. So if you can't send people here, you make people work here and get the business leaders of USA to invest here. We need investment, whether it comes from USA, China, or Russia, it doesn't matter. And China is not going to invest in us. So Russia doesn't have the capability to invest in us. Where then what is left? What is left is actually Europe and US and Middle East. But the biggest investment, if it has to come, it has to come from USA. It's coming. But there are implications in this whole story, right? And we have to understand how we're going to handle this. It's a problem of creating our own infrastructure. It's a problem of creating our own other structures, governmental structures, ease of doing business, all this nonsense which is being spoken of. We need to implement it. Your thinking of migration has to change. At the same time, please understand, it's not going to stop. Because migration from India, without migration from India, USA will stop functioning. I'm making a big statement, but that's the fact. So, implications. Okay, let's look at it. What does he say? Let's look at it a little further. The US, the United States must never be dependent on any outside power for core components, from raw material to parts to finished products, necessary to the nation's defense or economy. We must resecure our own independent and reliable access to the goods we need to defend ourselves and preserve our way of life. Reshoring, right? Here he talks of all this in the context of defense and economy. So, if you can't do in economy isn't going to take a long time. America will never be a manufacturing economy. We know that it's too costly. All that. Defense. So he's going to ensure that a lot of things from outside are going to cut off in defense. His dependency on outside sources for defense is going to get cut off. The axe is going to fall on us. Whether you like it or not, there are a lot of items of defense which we also export to them. So what do you do? Then he goes further on to say this will require expanding American access to critical minerals and materials while countering predatory economic practices. And the eh, predatory economic practices is a finger at China. Moreover, the intelligent community will monitor key supply chains and technological advances around the world to ensure we understand and mitigate vulnerabilities and threats to American security and prosperity. So, which means America will expand its reach of critical minerals. It's already started doing that. It has. That's why it has even done a deal with Pakistan. Though it has had its limits, nothing has gone forward. It will not go forward. That's a different story. But in terms of critical minerals, the story is with India. Well, it has gone to Australia, it has gone to Ukraine, it has gone to Russia also for many things. Let it happen. But where is the Indian leg in this whole story? Sooner or later, for critical minerals, USA will need India. I'm making this. Why? Because Japan, Australia, India, and USA have to form this partnership. So all those people who think Quad is dead, sorry, Quad will take a new form in some form. It might not happen the way we think it's happening, but it will happen eventually in another different manner. Right. Then, of course, he talks of the United States will reindustrialize its economy, reshore industrial production, and encourage and attract investment in our economy and our workforce, with a focus on the critical and emerging technology sectors that will define the future. We will do so through the strategic use of tariffs and new technologies that favor widespread industrial production in every corner of our nation. Will it succeed? I doubt if it will succeed. But will he stop trying? No. His focus is still China. But the implications is on India. Tariffs. They say that we are going to get into a trade deal by end of the year, beginning of the year. Every month they say, oh, we'll finish it in next 1 month, 2 months. So far it has not happened. But till then the tariffs are high. So you have to deal with this behemoth called USA, where the tariffs are going to be high. And there are implications. Again, there are opportunities and there are problems in this whole story. So if you look at it, the implications for India and Trump's corollary of the Monroe Doctrine, this global shift is going to affect India. There are implications for India, and India has to react. While there are effects and implications for India, there are huge opportunities for India. And these opportunities must be leveraged. If you are nimble and you want to be a global power, you have to do all this. Let's look at the Western Hemisphere. What does he say? He says Western Hemisphere can be summarized as enlist and expand. So when you talk of Western, that's Americas, North, South America, to some extent Europe. He says we're going to enlist friends and expand there. So we will enlist established friends in the hemisphere to control migration, stop drug flows, strengthen stability and security on land and sea. He's doing that. He's already done with Mexico. Look, Mexico has put 50% tariff on us. So now you're dealing with Mexico. You think that tariff has come just out of the blue? No. He's twisted, USA has twisted Mexico's tail. Mexico is reacting. You're trying to reach out to Brazil tomorrow, and you will have an effect through Brazil also. So he's looking at consolidating the Western Hemisphere. We want to open up at Canada. We want to. There's no doubt about it. And Canada has said so. But will USA allow that? You look at the Canadian Prime Minister, what did he say? Is the age where, Canada and USA were great friends without no borders. Yeah, it's over. You have to, Canada itself is looking at new partners. So if Canada is looking at new partners, why shouldn't India look at Canada as a new partner? That old story with that previous character is gone. Mark Carney is a different kettle of fish. And he's confronting a new world. So he's looking at us. So are we looking at new partners in the Western Hemisphere? While America says enlist and expand, can you enlist and expand in the Western Hemisphere? There are people who say, okay, I don't want to go with USA. I don't want to go with China either. I don't want that competition on my land. Can I do something else with others to balance it out? Hedge. Which is the easy hedging option? India. Opportunity. Unlike others, I see great opportunities in this national strategy of NSS, National Security Strategy of Trump and his corollary to Monroe Doctrine. There are problems, but there are opportunities. You don't have to be America's partner. We shouldn't be. Okay. Then These are, look, I'm only explaining to you what that man has written. These are what you're seeing on the screen here on my right. Okay, here is exactly verbatim from that national security strategy without change of a word. I'm reading each one out and trying to explain the way I need to interpret it. Not the way people in India have interpreted it, but the way we need to interpret it. Implications. Now he says non hemispheric competitors have made major inroads into our hemisphere. Straight China. Some foreign influence will be hard to reverse. He acknowledges the fact that Chinese influence in the Americas will be there. For example, in the Panama Canal, the Chinese companies have not been thrown out as it. At both ends of the canal, but their influence has been curtailed. Okay, right. Some foreign influences will be hard to reverse given the political alignments between certain Latin American governments and certain foreign actors. It's recognized. So, as part of his doctrine, he's going to break this thing between the Latin American governments and China. He's going to do that. And this is new, not new. Earlier, USA, as part of its Monroe Doctrine, was trying to wean these Latin American countries away from Russia. When it couldn't, it even invaded them. Honduras, El Salvador, Cuba. There are a lot of Latin American countries. I mean, Che Guevara, what was he? He was not a saint. He was not a capitalist. He was an out and out communist revolutionary propped up by the Soviets. So you're going to see this struggle there, which means, understand this implication for us. America will focus there. So will China. So can China focus everywhere? And China doesn't have the capability to focus everywhere. If it doesn't have the capability to focus everywhere, and if it is losing its influence there, either China quits that place or carries the fight forward there. Either way, we have to see what is in it for us. Have you thought of it? Look, I'm trying to expand my thinking. If China quits that place, there are opportunities for us. If China stays there, there are opportunities elsewhere. Because China staying there will always be in a fight. Okay, then he says hidden costs in espionage, cybersecurity, debt traps, and other ways are embedded in the allegedly low cost foreign assistance. We know that. What's happened in debt trapping Sri Lanka? What's happening in Bangladesh? I mean, surprisingly, Bangladesh, for all we spoke that it's going towards China, yeah, world, that, has not taken the J10C fighter. They've gone for the Eurofighter, Typhoons. Hard politics, man. When it comes to real politics and your own thing, you will do what is right for you. So you're going to see an increased amount of espionage, cyber threats, and China will continue its debt trap, diplomacy. China's playbook is out. There's no way it can change its playbook. Understand that. This low cost foreign assistance is the calling card of China. And if USA is going to fight that, so be it. I'm happy. The choice all countries should face is whether they want to live in an American led world of sovereign countries and free economies, or in a parallel one in which they are influenced by countries on the other side of the world. So he says, look, everyone says G2, P2, and all. This document doesn't talk of G2. He says he's choose between my world order and that fellow's. Our problem is very simple. We want neither. We want a world order which is based on something else. But that is utopian. Would you like to be in a Chinese-led world order? That's a point which India has to decide. And the decision is very easy. There's no way you want to be in a Chinese-led world order. So if you're not going to be in a Chinese-led world order, you have only two choices. Either you be in the American-led world order or create one based on United Nations and all, which is failing. So the and or act somewhere in between. Implications. These are the implications which are coming up every day. Okay. He talks specifically of China in this. He says American assumptions about China, namely that by opening our markets to China, encouraging American business to invest in China, and outsourcing our manufacturing to China, we would facilitate China's entry into the so called rules based international order. This did not happen. China got rich and powerful and used its wealth and power to consolidate its advantage. This is a fact. Is there something new? It's not something new. But for the first time, America has put it down in black and white. That we're not no more going to do that. What's the implication for India? We are hoping that China will invest in India. Let's stop living in a dream. The government of India should realize China will never invest in you. If China invests in you, it will debt trap you or put its talents in and it will not let go. So, any investment from China, any way you want to increase your exposure to China, has to be very careful. In fact, there's a model which is available with us. That's the implication. The model is whatever China did to USA, you should do to China. If you can do that, then deal with China. If you cannot do that, to hell with it. Look, understand, the Chinese people and the government allowed investment, allowed everything from USA and from EU to come in. And then they said, get lost. Same thing here. Can you use that model? Then he says, look, American elites over four successive administrations of both political parties were either willing enablers of China's strategy or in denial. The danger for us is, are we getting into that mold? We did get into that mold till Galwan happened. We were taught a rude lesson. Would you like to repeat it? We would be stupids to repeat it. And then he says the Indo-Pacific is already the source of almost half of the world's GDP based on PPP and one third based on nominal GDP. That share is certainly going to grow over the 21st century, which means the Indo-Pacific is already and will continue to be among the next century's key economic and geopolitical battlegrounds. To thrive at home, we must successfully compete there. So USA will be there in the Indo-Pacific. And we are not away from the Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is no more just the Pacific part. Indo is a huge thing and America has realized it. So there are implications for our security, their economy and force structure and everything. You're going to have a new paradigm when the US is going to be there, the Russians are going to be there, the Chinese are going to be there, and none of them are your friends. So you have to do what you have to do for yourself. Right? So all this nonsense, we have to be very clear as to how to handle this. Right? The United States imports Chinese goods indirectly from middlemen, and Chinese built factories in dozens of countries, including Mexico. It's very absolutely clear on China. China's exports to low-income countries are today nearly 4 times its exports to United States. When President Trump first took office in 2017, China's exports to United States stood at 4% of its GDP, but since have fallen to only 2% of its GDP. China continues to export to the United States through proxy countries. He's going to stop that. So if that is going to happen there, China will try to come into India, and that is precisely what we have to understand. The proxy country route, USA has recognized. It is going to put curbs on that. But China, with its huge over manufacturing capacity, needs markets. It's trying to open up Indian market. We have to understand the implications. The implications of this strategy, some are direct, some are indirect. Here, this is the only paragraph in which India is mentioned. The United States must work with our treaty allies and partners who together add 35 trillion in economic power to our own 30 trillion economy. He's still looking at that. Which are the partners he's looking at? $35 trillion worth. Japan, South Korea, India, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Europe, right? They together constitute more than half the world economy. He says America and its partners will constitute half the world economy, more than that. To counteract predatory economic practices and use our combined economic power to help safeguard our prime position in the world economy and ensure that allied economies do not become subordinate to any competing power. We must continue to improve commercial and other relations with India to encourage Delhi to contribute to the Indo-Pacific security. He needs India. He needs our economy, like China needs. India and China. Sorry, India is critical both to USA and China. Something we need to realize. It is no more we are a swing power. You're not a swing power anymore. You're not a balancing power anymore. You're a weighted critical power. Right? And he says we must continue to improve commercial and other relations with India to encourage New Delhi to contribute to Indo Pacific security, including through continued quadrilateral cooperation with Australia, Japan, and the United States, the Quad. So there are implications in this. The Quad is not dead. Like I said, the Quad might not be military, but it is latent military. Because the Quad has done more military activities than any other four nations together. That's a fact. And if Quad gets into critical minerals and supply chains in a serious manner, then things will change. But is that happening? With Australia, India, it's happening. Japan, India, the intent to happen is there, but the actual movement is slow. In India, USA, things are going, in its own steam. The day this consolidates, it will be a thing. But will it happen? If it doesn't happen, what? Yeah. Then he talks of military. He says we will build a military capable of denying aggression anywhere in the first island chain. Focus first island chain. But the American military cannot and should not have to do this alone. So everyone else has to pull it their weight. Or allies must step up and stand. Most importantly, do much more for collective defense. America's diplomatic efforts should focus on pressing our first island chain and partners to allow the US military greater access to their ports and other facilities, to spend more on their own defense, and most importantly, invest in capabilities aimed at deterring aggression. This will interlink in maritime security issues along the first island chain while reinforcing US and allies' capacity to deny any attempt to seize Taiwan or achieve a balance of forces so unfavorable to us to make defending that island impossible. He's still talking of defending that island. He says, I want everyone to spend to ensure that Taiwan can be not taken and China is confined to the first island chain. And that is happening. That is happening with Japan. And we'll talk of Japan as part of the Three Good Generals show. Implications. It frees India in the Indian Ocean. It prohibits China from coming here or inhibits. A related security challenge is the potential for any competitor to control the South China Sea. That's not going to be allowed. China will not be allowed to control the South China Sea. Why? This could allow a potentially hostile power, that is China, to impose a toll system. That means whenever you go through South China Sea, you pay China. And that is what China is trying. What is China's strategy? Everyone should pay a toll to China so that its economy can revive. Because internally the economy is down, which I spoke yesterday. Okay? Okay. This could potentially allow a hostile power to impose a toll system over one of the world's most vital lanes of commerce, or worse, to close and reopen it at will. Either of those two outcomes would be harmful to the US and the economy and broader US interests. Strong measures must be developed along with the deterrence necessary to keep those lanes open, free of tolls, and not subjected to arbitrary closure by one country. That is China. And I'll talk of it tomorrow morning. India, China. Chinese victory. What is the cost of Chinese victory? We'll talk of it. China needs a victory. Morning tomorrow. That's going to be the interesting part. And this is it. What is China trying finally? How can China revive its economy? If China has to revive its economy and greatness, it needs a victory, military victory. Where will it go? South China Sea, Himalayas, Japan. Let's talk. Middle East. Today, at least two of those dynamics are, this is talking of Middle East. Energy and supplies have diversified greatly. United States, once again, being a net security exporter. So, net energy exporter. So, USA is no more dependent on the Middle East. Superpower competition has given way to great power jockeying, in which United States retains the most enviable position, reinforced by President Trump's successful revitalization of our alliances in the Gulf with other Arab partners and with Israel. Conflict remains the Middle East's most dynamic, troublesome dynamic, and there is today less to this problem than headlines might one believe in. That's fact. Iran, the region's chief destabilizing force, has been greatly weakened by Israeli actions. Fact. The fact is that the Middle East, despite what's happening in Syria and what's happening in Gaza, is quietened. So, very important, he says, Middle East partners are demonstrating their commitment to combating radicalism, a trend line American policy should continue to encourage. So, if you look at what I said earlier in this about the Middle East, and now Middle East as an opportunity opens up. The IMEC might be delayed by a year, but I don't see it being stopped. It has to go forward. It has to go forward. It's a matter of time. Why? USA cannot handle the IMEC on its own. Neither can the Middle East countries. Iran is subdued. Turkey is in a corner. Look what's happening in the Black Sea Fleet, EAO, going to hit Turkey badly. All that is happening. So, US Indian role here will is natural. That's the implication. Are we ready to exploit it? Are we exploiting it? To some extent, yes. Some extent, no. But we'll talk of that a little later. Tomorrow or day after. But tomorrow we'll talk of India, China, Chinese victory. What is it? All that. And then he says America will always have core interest in ensuring that the Gulf energy supplies do not fall into the hands of an outright enemy. Which is the outright enemy? Is Iran. Which is the hidden enemy? China. Strait of Hormuz remains open. Red Sea remains navigable. So American presence in the Middle East is a given. Okay. And that the region will not be an incubator or exporter of terror against American interests or American homeland. Leverage this. This is where India needs to leverage. How can you hold Pakistan? That's where terror gets exported. What's happening in Australia, in the Bondi Beach? We'll talk of it again today evening. There are opportunities in the strategic doctrine. Okay, Africa. United States should transition from an aid-focused relationship with Africa to a trade and investment-focused relationship. So the USA is going to focus on Africa from trade and investment, favoring partnerships with capable, reliable states committed to opening their markets to US goods and services. US can't enter Africa without India. It's a known fact. There's a limit because India carries trust in Africa. And that is what you gain, the implication. And the fact that US needs India in Africa is well known. But can you leverage it is the issue in the India US equation? Normally, when we talk of India US equation, you drift to Pakistan only. But the India US equation is far beyond that. It is in Middle East, it is in Africa, it is in Europe, it is in many other places, it is in China. So, if you see this Trump doctrine, the new doctrine of Trump, there are many facets to this. At the tail end, I will show you a clip. And this clip is something without sound. Okay. And have a look at it. This is the C5 which has come out after Trump's talk. And I will discuss C5, the concept of C5, later the week. Hear this, or rather see this. So US, China, Russia, India, and Japan in one club. G7 is obsolete. And it's Trump who says all these are all above and India is above Europe. And he wants India and China to sit with Russia and USA. Will it spell a doom for Western unity? I'm not bothered. What does it mean for India? Again, NATO, what happens? It's okay. No, oh, sorry. Yeah, he's talking of all this. He's talking of world's top 10 population powers. He's not ignored about the practicality of these five countries. Comes out in this new thinking of C5, the core five. These core five countries matter to the earth. And I thought I'll put this across to all of you. I'll take this discussion separately on C5. We'll do a whole session on it. What are the implications? Right? So, this is where we'll end today. The Trump's national strategy, national security strategy, which everyone says is the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, might not have mentioned India too much. It's okay, but it reorders many things in the world. In this reordering, the implications for India are huge. That is what I thought I'll put across to you today. We'll talk of it in the evening. We'll talk of many of these things which you have raised. I see a lot of comments. We'll talk of all these in the evening. I'll not take too many comments at this point of time. I'll not answer too many questions because many of these things is part of my backlog. So please bear with me if I don't interact with you on taking on questions for the next 3-4 days before I get to that level where I open up and we start talking. I'm just covering. I'm doing a lot of backlog covering now. Okay. Yeah. With this, if you like this, press the like button, subscribe to Gunner Shot, and also join me as members.